Hey guys, I'm just going to be sharing my April reading wrap up here. I'm going to try to keep it really short and sweet for each book that I discuss because I have 11 books to discuss. 3 were audio, 8 were physical or ebooks. So really happy with that. It's because I read mostly romance in April, and romance I can just fly through. As usual, I will be going from least favorite to favorite, and I enjoyed all of the books in the month of April. There's been no book that I wouldn't even recommend. So the bottom of the list, unfortunately, is The Heiress Gets a Duke by Harper St. George. I read this and I actually watched the live show that Lacey and Jess were both doing for this book. So I'm really glad that I read this because I wanted to watch the live show and keep this review short and sweet. My rating for this is 3.5 stars. It's a historical romance about an American heiress for this new money family, and she travels to London just to be with her friend who's recently married a duke, and there is a duke, hence this whole title, who is pretty destitute. They have no more money, and so he needs to marry someone wealthy, which is this heiress. And the heiress and her family, they just want prestige because they're new money, so they are looked down upon. So if she marries a duke, it's basically a win-win for everybody. But she doesn't want that. It gets more complicated, but this was enjoyable. It was sweet, and I would recommend it if you like historical romance. I did find times in this book that I was very annoyed with the characters, so that kept me from like fully loving this as much as I would have liked to, but overall I still enjoyed this one. Next, getting into my 4-star category. So I read The Duke and I wasn't expecting to read The Duke and I by Julia Quinn because I love Bridgerton so much, the show, and I just knew the book wasn't going to live up to it, which is true. I enjoyed the book all right. It definitely was different from the show. I felt like the characters themselves were different from the show, and there were some minor plot development pieces that were different for obvious reasons with the show and the way that the show branched out with more characters. The Duke and I does not have that. So overall it was enjoyable. We all know the plot. I liked it. It didn't blow me away though. So 4 stars for this one. I don't think I'm going to be reading any more in the series because I'm just liking the show far better than the books, but I'm not mad that I read it. It just was kind of average to me, and that's fine for what it was because the show is perfection. Next, I listened to the audiobook Miracle Creek, and I gave this one 4 stars. This is very different from what I was expecting. It's kind of like a legal drama with all these different families, and the main family, the doctor who moved from Korea with his family, and he set up a hyperbaric oxygen tank that is used for like non-approved FDA medical reasons. So this oxygen therapy is very helpful for wound healing and certain illnesses, but he is basically offering this service for people who can't really get it done at a hospital because insurance won't cover it that way, because your mothers with children with autism or like some learning disabilities or just like different things that they can't exactly prove is treated by this treatment, but they think it can help it. I feel like I'm doing the worst job explaining it. Basically, there's a fire because oxygen. A child and a mother end up dead, and one of the mother of the dead child is on trial for killing her son, and so you're following this trial. You're following a bunch of other characters. It all gets very, very twisted. It was very hard and heartbreaking to read some of these scenes. Like, especially I found like the most heartbreaking part of this whole book was reading about the mother of the dead child and like what she went through, and it was just like it was a rough one. So overall, I didn't know what I was expecting with this book. I went into this completely blind and listened to it on audio. I would recommend it. It was, like I said, definitely heavy. I mean, you're dealing with this accident that caused the death of these people, and all the characters have something they're trying to hide, so a lot of secrets getting uncovered, that kind of storyline. Really interesting, a good audio book. Next, I read one to watch. I actually had rolled this one over. I was reading it in February, finished it, or sorry, I was reading it in March, finished it in April. This one is like a bachelorette style story, except our main female lead is a plus size girl, and she's kind of doing this because in the show there's never any rep for any other body type other than like the slender body type and build, and she's challenging that, and along the way she's falling in love, and I really just liked it. It's straight up The Bachelorette. If you like The Bachelorette, you'll probably like this. There's drama, there's romance, there's adventure, there's all of it. So I really liked this one. Next, with Kindle Unlimited, I read Hotshot Doc by R.S. Gray. This one was so good, very much Grey's Anatomy vibes. We have our female lead who is a surgical assistant, and then we have like this doctor who's super arrogant, cold, doesn't have friends, the whole thing. Anyway, they have interactions, and along the way they have a romance, and it was so cute. Predictable, but that's fine. Like, that's what I want in most romances. So this was just genuinely a good read. I told my friend to read it and she loved it, so we both just had like a really good time with the story. I would for sure recommend, if you want a good rom-com, R.S. Gray is it, but also check out Hotshot Doc because it's definitely one of my favorites of hers now. I finally read My Oxford Year by Julia Whelan. I have had this on my shelf for like half a year now. This is a romance, but it's also more a contemporary fiction about this American girl, not girl, she's like in her mid-20s or 30s, she's older, who wins the Rhodes Scholarship, and so she is going to be studying in Oxford for a year, and she develops a romance with one of the people there, but this definitely turns into way more than just a romance. I'm just gonna leave it there, go into this one blind, but if you like the sound of the start of that, you probably will enjoy it. But it took a turn I wasn't expecting, and it was really good. I really liked this one. Now I'm getting into my 4.5 star range, which I have quite a few. So first, on audio, I listened to Big Summer by Jennifer Weiner. This one was something I wasn't expecting at all. So it starts off seeming just like a contemporary fiction. Maybe it was gonna be a romance, and then it turns into a mystery. So I really loved that switch. I wasn't expecting it because I'd never read anything by her, so I don't know if that's actually her format for all of her books or what, but I found it to be really surprising. So this is about a girl who actually similar to One to Watch. She's a plus size influencer blogger, and she kind of becomes friends again with her old high school friend who treated her really poorly, and her friend was like super wealthy and popular and all of that, and our main character is not that at all. Basically, she gets invited to be her maid of honor because her friend has no friends, and it's like going to be this really huge outlandish affair, and she just basically asks her to consider being her maid of honor. Just read it. It was good. I definitely am going to read more from this author because this was like such a surprise. I don't know if I'll be surprised in her other books now, if she does this in all of them, but she also comes out with a book in May, so I have that on my sights to read for sure because I just loved it. This was a really good book. Next, my other audiobook was TheOne by John Mars. So this was a thriller, and it was so interesting. I'd been so hooked on this concept for so long. But basically, there's this geneticist who determines the genes that are your soulmate genes, and when you submit in like a swab of your cheek or whichever it is, they will match you and find your actual soulmate. So people are going around finding their soulmates, but the consequences of this are pretty brutal because people who are married are doing this test, and then they're finding out they have a soulmate, and the soulmate connection that they find is super strong from their first meeting. These people just connect, and it is a much deeper relationship and feeling than they've ever had before. So you're following 4 people, I believe, and just their experience with the soulmate thing. I'm just so captivated by this concept, and I liked how this was a dark turn of it. Like, it's not just the story you're reading about, oh, they found each other and love each other and live happily ever after. Like, there are some twisted things within each story that made it so interesting. Highly would recommend this, and would recommend the audiobook because each character is a different voice actor, which makes it easier to determine who you're reading from. And I started watching the TV show, and it's literally nothing like it's not even the same book at all. It's like they just took the concept of finding your soulmate with genetics and they decided to do a whole new thing with it, so that was weird. I have one of my anticipated releases of the year, and that is Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. This, I hate how the cover, first of all, is so bright and cheery and happy, because inside it is not all bright and cheery and happy. This is about Vanessa and Adrian. They are neighbors in their apartment complex. She has recently gotten care of her sister's daughter. So her daughter is a newborn, so she's caring for this child, and Adrian kind of comes in and helps her one night, and they strike up a friendship and they become friends. Adrian is a crazy workaholic. He is just committed to his job. He doesn't take any adventures or have any fun. And Vanessa is a travel vlogger, so they are complete opposites in that way, but she's kind of landlocked for a time with this child, but still she manages to have fun and find adventures, and together they do that. The heavy thing comes in with the title. It may be obvious, but she only has a year to live. Life's too short. And so it brings obviously a heaviness to this romance, which Abby Jimenez has done in her other 2 books, so I was expecting that. And I really liked that element to the story. I like how it's not all just happiness. Like, there are some really serious conversations that Vanessa and Adrian have to have because of her family history of disease and what that means for her and for her future. And I loved this one. I don't know if I liked it as much as the other 2 books by Abby Jimenez, but I still would consider it a must read if you've read her other 2 books and liked them. And I'm just still really glad that I read it, because overall I really enjoyed it. I love a friends to lover romance, and this one delivered in that way, and it was just sweet in times but also heavy, so it was good. Next, this would have been my favorite book of the month if not for my other book maybe reading it early, but You Love Me by Carolyn Kepnes. This is the 3rd book in the You series, so I'm not going to say too much about it, but the You series, if you've watched it on Netflix or if you've read it, it's following this character named Joe Goldberg. He becomes very obsessed with women. He'll attach himself to like a certain woman and stalk them, and he's really creepy and weird, and he'll totally manipulate their lives for them to fall in love, and he wins these women over, but he's just a complete like psycho underneath. So this 3rd book and his journey in his life, it delivered. It was very similar in ways to his other books. There's a lot of drama, not even within himself, but within the other characters in the story. I thought it was so much fun though. Like, I just had so much fun reading this. By page like 30, I was already like, I'm probably gonna give this book 5 stars because it's just that good. Actually, I ended up doing 4.5 stars, but I bumped it up on Goodreads to 5 stars. So if you've read the You series, this is a for sure must read for you. I just really loved it. I love this whole series. She could write 10 million more books in the series and I will read every single one of them, because I just always want to know what Joe is up to, and he's just fascinating to me. He's such a good character to read from. The way that these books are written pulls you into the story so deeply, and you're so troubled by him, but you also want him to get away with everything that he does, and it's really interesting how she is able to do that. But enough of that. This is incredible. Just go read the whole series if you haven't, because it's really good. And then my favorite book of the month / of the year probably is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I wanted to read this one desperately since she came out with Beach Read. I have a review for it that's pretty short, so I'll leave that linked below. But friends to lovers, vacationing, I love everything. This book is hysterical. You read it, it's perfect for summer, just like my favorite book for many reasons. But I'm gonna end this here because like I do have a full review for it, so enough of that. But this is a must read in my opinion. Out of like all of the good books I've mentioned, this is the one that you should read. So that's gonna wrap up my April wrap up. Thank you so much for watching, and happy reading.